The morning sun filtered through the windows of Miller's Diner in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. Sarah Chen sat in a corner booth, watching her 10-year-old son, Tommy, color in his sketchbook while sipping hot chocolate. She held her own coffee cup with both hands, letting the warmth settle into her bones. It had been a rough week at the base, long hours, difficult decisions, the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Sarah was used to the weight, though. At 42 years old, she had spent 2 decades in the military, climbing from a young enlisted soldier to her current rank of Major General. She wore it like armor, along with her perfectly pressed uniform. But here, in the diner with her son, she tried to let that armor slip just a little. Tommy needed his mother, not the general. "Mom, look at this dragon," Tommy said, turning his sketchbook around. He had her eyes dark and thoughtful, but his smile came from somewhere deeper, unbroken by the struggles she had endured. "That's beautiful, buddy," she said, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "You're getting better every week." Tommy beamed. Single-parenting while serving as a high-ranking officer was not easy. Sarah's ex-husband had left 5 years ago, unable to handle her deployments and her dedication to her career. He had moved to California and rarely called, but Sarah had never regretted her choices. She loved her country and she loved her son. Both demanded pieces of her heart, and she had learned to give enough to each. The diner door opened with a familiar chime. Sarah didn't look up immediately, but she felt the shift in the room's energy. Several heads turned. A man in a Navy dress uniform walked in, flanked by 2 junior officers. The uniform was sharp, the bearing confident. Sarah recognized the insignia immediately, Admiral. A SEAL Admiral if the trident on his chest meant what she thought it did. Admiral James Kirkland was known throughout the military community. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through his dark hair, he had the look of someone who had earned every inch of his authority through blood and sacrifice. He was also known for something else, a sharp tongue and a tendency to dismiss anyone outside his SEAL teams as lesser soldiers. Sarah didn't care about his reputation. She returned her attention to Tommy, who was now explaining the dragon's special powers in elaborate detail. She listened with half her attention, letting the familiar comfort of her son's voice wash over her. That piece lasted exactly 4 minutes. "Single mom bringing the kid to work, huh?" a loud voice called out. It wasn't directed at Sarah specifically, but she knew instantly it was about her. The Navy officers had taken a table near theirs. Admiral Kirkland was looking at her with an expression that mixed amusement and something sharper, judgment perhaps. "That's sweet, building memories before you have to abandon him for another deployment." Sarah's hands stilled around her coffee cup. Tommy's head snapped up, his face confused. He didn't understand the cruelty in those words yet, and Sarah wanted to keep it that way. "It's okay, baby," she said softly to Tommy. "Keep telling me about your dragon." But the Admiral wasn't done. He turned to one of his officers and spoke loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "These army types, they always try to balance the impossible. Single-parent, high rank, thinking they can do it all. Truth is, they're just spreading themselves too thin. The job demands everything. You can't be a real soldier and a real parent at the same time. Someone always gets the short end." The diner had gone quiet. People were looking. Sarah felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest, but she swallowed it down. She had dealt with prejudice before, against women in the military, against single mothers, against those who climbed the ranks too fast. She had learned not to engage. Engagement only proved she was affected. "Come on, Tommy," she said, gathering her purse. "Let's get you home, you have homework." As she stood to leave, reaching for Tommy's hand, the Admiral spoke again, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "You know what your real problem is?" he called after her. "You're trying to wear 2 ranks at once, soldier and mother. You can't do both justice. Your kid probably barely knows you, and your soldiers probably don't respect you because they know your real priority is at home. It's just nature, ma'am. No shame in accepting your limitations." Sarah stopped. She turned around slowly, and for just a moment her eyes met his. In that moment, Admiral Kirkland saw something that made him shift slightly in his seat. Not fear exactly, but a kind of steely certainty that suggested he had just made a mistake. But his pride wouldn't let him back down. He smiled, a challenging smile, and looked away first, as if dismissing her entirely. Tommy's hand was trembling in Sarah's grip. He didn't understand the words, but he understood the ugliness behind them. "Come on, sweetheart," she whispered, and led him out into the bright morning. As they walked to the car, Tommy asked quietly, "Mom, what does he mean? That you don't know us?" Sarah knelt down and pulled her son into a hug, right there in the parking lot. She held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his strawberry shampoo. "He doesn't know us," she said firmly. "And we don't need to worry about people who make up their minds before they know the facts. Some people, baby, they're afraid of things that are different from what they're used to. So they tear others down to feel bigger. We're not going to be like that." Tommy nodded against her shoulder, but Sarah could feel the hurt in him. It made something crystallize inside her, not anger exactly, but determination. This Admiral had no idea who he was talking to. He made assumptions based on her uniform, her rank, her gender, her role as a single parent. He had no idea about the 18 months she had spent in active combat zones, the 3 soldiers she had personally saved from an ambush in Afghanistan, the policies she had written that had changed military protocol on mental health resources, the way she had fought every single day to prove herself 10 times over. And most importantly, he had no idea about her son, about the bright, brave, beautiful boy who had never once doubted his mother, despite all the odds against them. Sarah drove Tommy home to their small house on Maple Street, a modest 3-bedroom with a backyard where Tommy liked to build forts. She kissed him goodbye before he went to school, made him promise to tell her everything about his day at pickup, and then she drove to the base. By the time she reached her office, Sarah had locked away the hurt. The armor was back in place. But she had made a quiet promise to herself. She would prove Admiral Kirkland wrong, not for him but for Tommy, and for every single parent struggling to serve their country with honor. For 3 weeks after the diner incident, Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed intensity. As the commander of Fort Bragg's Strategic Operations Division, she had enormous responsibilities. There were training schedules to oversee, soldier evaluations to conduct, new recruits to assess, and 100 different crises, both large and small, that demanded her attention every single day. She worked late into the evenings, reviewing files in her office, attending conference calls with military leadership across the country, and writing detailed reports on operational readiness. When she got home, Tommy was often already asleep, and her heart would ache as she looked at his sleeping face in the dim light from the hallway. But she also made sure to wake him up on time, pack his lunch with love notes inside, attend his school's parent-teacher conference despite the conflict with a base meeting, and spend quality time with him on weekends. She was spreading herself thin, she knew it, but she was also proving it was possible. 3 weeks in, she got a call from her superior officer, General Michael Torres. His voice on the phone was careful, measured. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come to my office?" She knew immediately that this had to do with Admiral Kirkland. There was no other reason Torres would summon her like this, with that particular tone. Her mind raced through the possibilities as she made her way across the base to his office in the command building. General Torres was a good man. 67 years old with 30 years of service, he had always treated Sarah with respect. He had championed her promotions, supported her decisions, and backed her up in meetings with the Pentagon. But he was also a realist, and he understood how the military worked, especially how politics worked within the military. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "I'm going to be straight with you because you deserve that." Sarah sat, her spine straight, her hands folded in her lap. "Admiral Kirkland filed a formal complaint with the Joint Chiefs," Torres said quietly. "He's claiming that you are unfit for command due to divided loyalties between your parental responsibilities and your military duties. He's citing the incident at Miller's Diner as evidence that you're neglecting your soldiers by using work time for personal matters." Sarah felt her chest tighten, but she kept her voice level. "He didn't see me neglecting anything. He saw me having coffee with my son before school, on my personal time, before I arrived at the base." "I know," Torres said, "and the complaint is thin. It won't go anywhere officially, but it will create noise, uncomfortable noise. There will be questions, investigations into your time management, reviews of your command decisions. It will be a headache, Sarah, a real headache." "He's doing this because I stood up to him," Sarah said. It wasn't a question. Torres nodded slowly. "Admiral Kirkland is a proud man. He's used to being the smartest person in the room, and he doesn't handle being challenged well, especially not by a woman, especially not by an Army officer. He sees your success as a challenge to the Navy's superiority in military culture. It's petty, but it's real." Sarah felt the injustice of it burning inside her, but she kept it contained. "What do you recommend?" "Stay calm. Don't engage with him. Continue doing your job with excellence and let your work speak for itself. The complaint will probably die in committee, but prepare yourself for some uncomfortable scrutiny over the next few months. As Sarah left his office, she felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about a rude comment in a diner anymore. This was about someone using their power to undermine her, to question her competence, to suggest that her achievement was somehow less legitimate because she was also a mother. That night she held Tommy while he slept and made another promise. She would not let this break her. She would not let this man's pride damage her son's future or her own career. But she also wouldn't ignore it. She would document everything. She would build an unshakable case that she was exactly what she claimed to be: a soldier, a mother, and someone entirely worthy of the rank she had earned. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah began a meticulous process. She documented every hour of her work, every decision she made, every achievement she accomplished. She reached out to her soldiers, formally and informally, asking them to evaluate her leadership. The responses were unanimous. She was fair, competent, visionary, and deeply respected. She also began researching Admiral Kirkland more thoroughly. What she found was interesting. He had 3 ex-wives, no children of his own, and a well-documented history of clashing with superior officers who challenged his methods. He had also been reprimanded twice, officially but quietly, for unprofessional conduct toward female soldiers. Sarah saved everything to a secure drive, not to attack him but to protect herself, to have the facts ready if she needed them. 2 months after the diner incident, Sarah received an invitation to the Regional Military Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. It was a prestigious gathering, hosted annually by the Pentagon, where the top military leaders from all branches came together to discuss strategy, share best practices, and network. Sarah had attended once before, 5 years ago, before her promotion to Major General. This year, she was being invited as one of the featured speakers. The topic: modern leadership challenges in military operations. She was honored and nervous. Speaking at that level in front of such high-ranking officials meant everything had to be perfect. She prepared extensively. She worked with her team to develop a presentation that showcased new approaches to soldier mental health, retention strategies that worked, and ways to build stronger command structures in modern warfare. Her presentation was based on real data, real outcomes, and real lives improved. The night before she left for D.C., Tommy made her promise something. "Promise me you'll remember the good parts," he said, in that serious way he had sometimes. "What good parts, buddy?" "All the parts when you helped people. Tell them about the soldiers you saved. Tell them about the families. Don't let that mean man make you forget why you do it." Sarah had no idea how her son could be so wise at 10 years old, but she kissed his forehead and promised. The conference took place in a massive hotel near the Pentagon, with conference rooms spread across multiple floors. Military leaders filled the hallways in dress uniforms, shaking hands, conducting informal meetings, renewing old connections. Sarah's presentation was scheduled for the second day, early afternoon. She had reviewed her slides 100 times. She was ready. What she wasn't ready for was seeing Admiral Kirkland in the hallway, outside the conference room. He was there with 2 other Navy officers, discussing something that made them all laugh. When he saw Sarah, his expression shifted. For just a moment, she saw something that looked like recognition, not friendly recognition, but the recognition of an adversary. He excused himself from his colleagues and walked directly toward her. "Major General Chen," he said, his voice carrying that same mocking tone from the diner. "Surprised to see you here. I didn't know Army officers made it to these high-level conferences. Must be having a hard time finding qualified Navy and Air Force people." Sarah kept her voice professional, cool. "Admiral Kirkland, I'm speaking on leadership strategy. Should be interesting for the Navy to hear how other branches approach building stronger command structures." "A woman's perspective on leadership," he said, his eyes glinting with something cruel. "How modern. What are you going to talk about? How to balance your makeup application with tactical decision-making?" A woman nearby gasped. An older Air Force general stopped in his tracks, clearly shocked at Kirkland's rudeness. Sarah felt her jaw clench, but she spoke calmly. "I'm going to talk about soldier welfare, retention rates, and mental health protocols. All things that have been proven to increase combat effectiveness. But I'm sure you're busy. Enjoy the rest of the conference." She turned to walk away, but she heard him call after her, loud enough for several people to hear. "Good luck with your little presentation, ma'am. Try not to cry if someone asks a tough question." Sarah didn't turn around, but inside, something had hardened into determination. The presentation room was filled by 1 p.m. at least 200 military officers, from generals to colonels, from every branch. Sarah took her place at the podium and took a breath. And then she delivered the best presentation of her life. She spoke about losing soldiers and how grief had taught her the importance of mental health services. She spoke about training innovations she had implemented that had increased soldier readiness by 30%. She spoke about building trust with her troops, about listening to ideas from every rank, about creating cultures of respect and accountability. She spoke, without mentioning him directly, about how mockery and disrespect had no place in a military that asked soldiers to die for their country. She spoke about how a leader who tore others down was a leader who didn't trust their own position. The room was silent, completely silent, and then it erupted in applause. Officers stood up. Generals came to shake her hand afterward. The commanding general of the entire region told her it was the best leadership presentation he had heard in 5 years. Admiral Kirkland was sitting in the back of the room. Sarah saw him leave before the applause even finished. That night back in her hotel room, Sarah sat on the bed and cried. Not from sadness, but from the release of all the stress she had been carrying. She called Tommy. "Hey, buddy, how was school?" "Good, Mom. Did you tell them the good parts?" Sarah returned to Fort Bragg a changed person in one small but significant way. She was no longer going to hide. She was no longer going to minimize her achievements or apologize for being a mother and a soldier. She was going to be both, fully and unapologetically. A week after the conference, she got a call from the Pentagon. It was from the office of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officer in the entire country. Her heart sank. She thought it was about Kirkland's complaint finally reaching its peak. "Major General Chen, can you hold for Chairman Bradford?" Her hands were shaking as she waited. Tommy was at school, her office was quiet. This felt momentous. "Major General Chen," a warm, authoritative voice came through the line. "This is Chairman Bradford. I wanted to speak with you personally. I was at your presentation in Washington. Outstanding work, outstanding." Sarah exhaled slowly. "Thank you, sir. We're making some changes to the military's leadership training programs. Your approach to soldier welfare, mental health, and command structure is exactly what we need across all branches. I'd like to offer you a position on the Pentagon's Strategic Leadership Council. It would mean some travel to Washington, but I believe you're the right person for it. General Torres tells me you manage your personal responsibilities well. Can you handle it?" Sarah thought of Tommy, of their routine, of his teacher who would help with homework on late nights, of the babysitter they already trusted. She thought of what this would mean for her career, for her ability to influence military policy across all branches. "Yes, sir," she said. "I can handle it." "Excellent, we'll send official paperwork, but I wanted to personally welcome you to the team. And Major General, your presentation made some waves. Not everyone was happy. But that's what happens when you challenge the status quo. Keep doing what you're doing." After she hung up, Sarah sat in her office chair and smiled. The news spread quickly through the military community. By the end of the week, everyone at Fort Bragg knew that Major General Sarah Chen had been selected for the Pentagon's Strategic Leadership Council. It was a huge honor, a position that would almost certainly lead to further promotion, possibly even to 3-star general. It was Admiral Kirkland's worst nightmare. 2 days after the announcement, something unexpected happened. Sarah received an email from someone in the Pentagon's Inspector General's office. An investigation into Admiral Kirkland's conduct had been opened, not because of anything Sarah did, but because of patterns that had been documented over his entire career. Multiple female officers had come forward, describing inappropriate comments, discriminatory behavior, and abuse of power. The investigation had nothing to do with Sarah specifically, but her complaint, the one General Torres had mentioned, had apparently contributed to the decision to finally take action. Sarah was not vindictive by nature, but she did not feel sorry for Admiral Kirkland. He had made his own choices. The investigation took 4 months. During that time, Sarah threw herself into her new role at the Pentagon. She traveled to Washington every other week, developing new protocols for military leadership that would change how officers were trained and evaluated. She worked with generals, colonels, and enlisted personnel at every level. She was building something important, something that would affect the entire military for decades. And she continued being Tommy's mother. She made his school events. She helped with homework. She told him bedtime stories. She was present even when she was tired, even when she was stressed. Tommy was thriving. He had made the school soccer team. He was bringing home straight A's. He had a light in his eyes that came from knowing his mother was proud of him and truly loved him, fully and without reservation. 3 months into her Pentagon role, Sarah got the official notification. Admiral James Kirkland had been removed from his command and placed on medical leave. The official story was vague, health concerns and family matters, but everyone in the military knew what it meant. He had been forced out. There was no vindication in it for Sarah, no triumph. She felt mostly sad that it had taken so long, sad that there were probably dozens of other officers doing exactly what Kirkland had done, getting away with it. Sad that the military still had so far to go. But she also felt a quiet satisfaction. She had not fought back with anger or revenge. She had fought back with excellence, with integrity, and with the truth. 6 months after Admiral Kirkland had been removed from command, Sarah was working late in her Pentagon office. It was a Friday night, and most people had gone home. The building was quiet, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of cleaning crews. She was reviewing a proposal for new mental health initiatives when her secretary appeared in her doorway. Unusual, since her secretary had left 2 hours ago. "Major General Chen, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he was very insistent." Sarah looked up, frowning. It was nearly 8 o'clock at night. "Who?" "Admiral Kirkland." Sarah felt her entire body go rigid. Every muscle tensed. She wanted to say no, wanted to have him removed, wanted nothing to do with him, but something made her pause. She was curious about what he wanted, and she was strong enough now to hear it. "Send him in," she said. Admiral Kirkland looked smaller than she remembered. His uniform hung loosely on his frame. His face was drawn, aged. He looked like a man who had lost everything. He stood in her doorway, hat in his hands, and for a long moment he didn't speak. Sarah waited, saying nothing, making him sit with the discomfort. "I wanted to apologize," he finally said. His voice was rough, quiet. "For everything, the diner, the complaint, all of it." Sarah gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Sit." He sat, perched on the edge of the seat like a man who wasn't sure he was welcome. He wasn't. "I've had a lot of time to think," he said. "The investigation made me look at myself, really look at myself for the first time in a long time. I didn't like what I saw." Sarah said nothing. She waited. "I was afraid," he continued. "That's what it comes down to. I was afraid of people like you, people who broke the mold, people who proved that strength doesn't look like I thought it should look. And instead of accepting that, instead of learning from it, I tried to tear you down. I tried to make you fit into my understanding of what a soldier should be." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked quietly. "Because I owe you an apology, and because I need you to know that you were right. Everything you've done, everything you've built with your son while serving at the highest levels, you were right. I was wrong." Sarah took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the past year, the hurt, the injustice, the determination. And in this moment, facing the man who had caused so much of it, she didn't feel angry. She felt something more complex. Sadness for the years he had wasted. Respect for the fact that he was brave enough to admit he was wrong. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "But I didn't do this for you to apologize. I did it because I had to, for my son, for myself, for every person who's been told they don't belong." Kirkland nodded. "I know. That's why your apology means more to me than anything." He stood to leave, and Sarah found herself speaking again. "My son asked me something before that conference in Washington. He asked me to remember the good parts, to remember why I do what I do." She paused. "Maybe you should remember the good parts too. Maybe that's how you start over." Kirkland's eyes were wet when he left her office. Sarah didn't know if he would take her advice. She didn't know if he would actually change, or if this was just a moment of weakness before he rebuilt his defenses. But she had said what needed to be said. 2 weeks later, Sarah was promoted to lieutenant general. It was announced officially at the Pentagon, with the chairman standing beside her as she was given her 3rd star. Tommy was there, watching his mother pin on the insignia that represented 30 years of service, sacrifice, and an unshakable commitment to excellence. That night, they went to Miller's diner to celebrate. Sarah and Tommy sat in a booth near the window, and Tommy ordered a chocolate milkshake while Sarah had coffee. The owner, who had been there that day months ago when Kirkland had been so cruel, came over personally. "Congratulations, General," he said, shaking her hand. "We're proud of you. The whole town is proud of you." Tommy looked at his mother with eyes full of admiration. "You did it, Mom. You became a 3-star general." "We did it, buddy," Sarah said, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "Both of us. This rank means nothing without you, without knowing that I had you to come home to, that I had a reason to be the best version of myself every single day." Tommy smiled, the same smile that had got her through 18 months in combat zones, through sleepless nights balancing 2 impossible jobs, through the cruelty of a man who had tried to convince her that she couldn't do both. "You know what," Tommy said, "I always knew you could. I always believed in you." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Instead, she smiled at her son, the person who had taught her what real strength was, the person who had shown her that you didn't have to choose between being a mother and being a soldier. You just had to be brave enough to be both. As they sat together in that diner, watching the sun set over Fort Bragg, Sarah thought about Admiral Kirkland. She hoped he had found what he was looking for in his apology. She hoped he would remember the good parts as she had told him. But mostly, she was grateful that she didn't need his approval or his validation anymore. She had something better. She had the respect of her soldiers, the love of her son, and the knowledge that she had changed military culture for the better. She had proven that a woman could be a general and a mother. She had proven that single parents could lead nations. She had proven that strength came in many forms. And most importantly, she had proven that the greatest victories were never about tearing others down. They were about lifting yourself up so high that nothing anyone said could touch you. Tommy finished his milkshake and asked for a refill. Sarah laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and ordered one for him. Outside, the stars were coming out over North Carolina. Tomorrow, Lieutenant General Sarah Chen would return to the Pentagon, to the Strategic Leadership Council, to the work of reshaping military culture. But tonight, she was just a mother and her son, celebrating together in a small-town diner.